The king of Elsmore once asked me to stop a clock. In 31 years at Ravensgate Palace, nobody had ever asked me to stop one. Start them, yes. Fix them, adjust them, apologize to them. But stop one, no. My name is Tobias Wren. I wind the clocks, 214 of them every Wednesday in a fixed order I could walk in my sleep. Kitchen corridor first, because the staff need the hour. Long gallery last, because that one takes patience and I'm too tired by then to rush it. That's my whole job. It sounds small. It is small. But you learn things, walking every corridor of a palace once a week for 3 decades. You learn which doors are usually open. You learn when a room smells like it hasn't been used. And you learn to notice when a house changes its mind about somebody. It was late October. Rain, the kind that doesn't fall so much as hang there, soaking your coat while you're still deciding whether to run. I came in through the servants' arch at 6:30. Down at the main gates, I could already see the tourists lined up along the railings, hoods up, phones out, waiting for the guard change like the weather was somebody else's problem. A school group was there too, 20 kids in yellow vests, all of them pressing their faces between the bars. One boy kept shouting at a guardsman, trying to make him blink. The guardsman didn't, he never does. The kid's teacher pulled him back by his hood and the boy laughed, and I thought, that's it, that's the whole country in one moment. Somebody testing, somebody standing still. Inside, the palace was warm and smelled of floor polish and old radiator dust. I started my round. Kitchen corridor, boot room, the little brass carriage clock in the pantry that loses 4 minutes a week no matter what I do to it. Then the household board. I want you to understand what that is because outsiders never get it. It's a wall of brass nameplates in the staff passage, listing every member of the royal household and where their office sits. Nobody official ever announces anything at Ravensgate. Not really. The board announces it. When somebody's rising, their plate moves up. When somebody's finished, it's gone by Tuesday and nobody says a word about the empty screw holes. That Wednesday, Queen Isolde's plate had moved. Not removed, moved, down 2 rows into the section for the East Wing, the section for people who receive visitors and open hospital extensions and are, as we say around here, very kindly supported in their work. I stood there with the winding key in my hand, and my coat still dripping. 27 years she'd been married to him. She'd come into this house as the prince's second wife, and half the country had hated her for it loudly for a decade. She outlasted every one of them, not by fighting, by turning up. Rain, funerals, bad press, worse press, she turned up. I once watched her stand in a hospital corridor for 2 hours past her schedule because a woman wanted to finish telling her about a son. And now her name was in the East Wing. I told myself it was a clerical thing. Offices get reshuffled. Nobody thinks about the board except me. Except by 9 o'clock, I'd seen 3 more things. Her private secretary, a sharp, kind man named Holloway who'd been with her 19 years, was carrying a document box into Prince Cassian's study. Not delivering, carrying it in and staying. The leather cases, the government papers, the ones that come every morning from the ministries, the ones the king has read at 7 a.m. every day of his reign, those cases were stacked outside Cassian's door. Not the king's. And a locksmith was on his knees at the sundial room, changing the lock. The sundial room is where the privy table meets. 12 people. Real power, the kind you don't post about. The king has chaired it for 11 years, and before that his mother chaired it for 49. I wound the clock in the passage outside, and I took longer than I needed to. The locksmith looked up at me, young lad, rain in his hair. 2 keys, he said, mostly to himself. They only want 2 keys cut. 11 years, there'd been 3. Here is what nobody outside a palace understands. Nothing is ever said. There's no shouting. There's no slammed door. There's no moment where a king stands up at a long table and announces that things are changing. If that ever happened, you'd hear about it. Somebody would sell it. What actually happens is quieter and much, much worse. A dinner seating plan gets redone. Somebody's name comes off a list of 8 and goes onto a list of 30. An office is described as better suited. A man's tie is brought to him in the morning, and it's the tie he wore at his father's funeral, and nobody planned that, but he notices. By that Wednesday afternoon, the whole house knew, and the whole house was pretending not to. The footmen were being extremely polite to each other. That's the tell. When Ravensgate is nervous, everybody says thank you twice. I did my round: blue drawing room, the map corridor, the chapel clock, which is older than the palace and hates me. At 2, I passed Prince Cassian's study door. It was open a crack. He was standing at the window with the leather cases open on the desk behind him, untouched, and he had one hand flat on the glass like he was checking whether it was cold. He's 42. He has his mother's chin and his father's shoulders, and a way of going very still when he doesn't like something. He didn't look excited. That's what stayed with me. A man being handed a kingdom, and he was standing there like somebody had asked him to identify a body. At 4, I found the king. Not on purpose. I was in the long gallery, which is my last stop, and I was up on the small stepladder behind the case of the coronation clock. That clock was started at the exact minute Alaric III was crowned, 41 years ago, and it has not stopped since. My predecessor wound it. His predecessor wound it. I've wound it 1,600 times. The case door was open. I was inside the housing, half hidden by the pendulum, arms up, key in the mainspring. And the gallery doors opened. I should have coughed. I should have made a noise. Every instinct I've got said, announce yourself, Tobias. I didn't. I froze. And then it was too late to be anything but a man hiding in a clock. They walked slowly. Him first, one hand out for the wall the way he does now and pretends he doesn't. Her behind him, half a step, watching his feet. They stopped near the window, rain on the glass. Down in the forecourt, a bagpipe somewhere, the changing of something. He said her name. Just that, Isolde. She said, I know. He said, I want you to hear it from me, and not from a piece of brass on a wall. And I nearly fell out of that clock. She laughed, not a bitter laugh, a tired one, the laugh of a woman who has been married a long time to a proud man. Alaric, she said, I moved my own plate. Silence. The pendulum went past my nose, tick, tick. I asked Holloway to do it 3 weeks ago, she said. You weren't well enough to be told. He didn't answer straight away. When he did, his voice had gone rough at the edges. That wasn't yours to decide. No, she agreed, but it was mine to give up. I heard him breathe out. I heard his hand go on the sill, hard, the way a man does when his legs are lying to him about how well they're doing. And I heard her cross the floor and take his elbow. No fuss. She'd done it 1,000 times. She got him to a chair the way you'd move a piece of furniture you loved. He's ready, she said, and you're going to be here to watch him do it, which is more than your mother got. I stayed in that clock case for 11 minutes. I know it was 11, because I was staring at the movement the whole time. Eventually the king spoke again, and his voice had changed. It had gone practical. That's what the old ones do when the feeling gets too big. They start discussing arrangements. Cassian takes the table on Monday, he said. I'll sit for the first one. After that he sits alone. Good. And the cases go to him from tomorrow. I'll still read them, but they go to him first. She said yes. I'm not dying, Isolde. I didn't say you were. You've said it 3 times this week in the way you pass me the salt. She laughed again, properly that time. And then he said, very quietly, the thing I'll take with me into my own coffin. I don't want to be carried out of a room I couldn't leave on my own. There was a long pause, rain, the pipes outside stopping mid-phrase. Then his chair scraped, and I heard him walk slowly, alone, no wall, across the gallery toward me. I have never wanted so badly to be a smaller man. He stopped in front of the case. He looked in. He saw me. 61 years old, elbows in a pendulum, key in my fist, wearing an expression I imagine was not my best. He didn't shout. He looked at me for a moment, and something moved behind his eyes that I think was relief, as if he'd rather it was me than a camera, as if he'd rather it was somebody who understood how a thing is wound. "Ren," he said. "Sir." "How long has this one been running?" 41 years, sir, since 11:04 in the morning." He nodded slowly. He put 2 fingers on the glass. "Stop it," he said. I thought I'd misheard. "Sir." "Not tonight, Monday. When my son sits down at that table, I want this clock stopped." He looked at me properly. "It started when I took it. It stops when I give it. That was always the deal, Ren. Nobody else ever seems to remember the second half." Behind him, the Queen stood up. She walked over. She didn't look at the clock. She looked at me and she said, "Tobias, when you've finished, would you wind the little carriage clock in my new office? It loses time badly. I'd like it right on the first morning." My new office, like it was nothing, like she'd chosen the wallpaper herself. I said, "Yes, ma'am." And she said, "Thank you," and touched the king's arm, and they went out together. And I stood in a room with 200 years of ticking, and I could not move. I stopped the coronation clock on Monday at 4 minutes past 9, while 12 people took their seats in the sundial room, and a 42-year-old man in his father's chair cleared his throat and said, "Shall we begin?" I opened the case. I put my hand flat against the pendulum. It fought me. They always do. There's 41 years of momentum in a weight like that, and it does not want to be told. Then it went still, and the gallery went silent in a way that made my ears ring. Nobody came. Nobody photographed it. There was no announcement. Down at the gates, the tourists were filming the guard change in the drizzle, and a boy in a yellow vest was still trying to make a man in a red tunic blink. The king sat through that first meeting and said nothing. He listened to his son. The Queen opened a rehabilitation center in the north that afternoon and stayed 40 minutes over. And I went home, and I told nobody for 11 years. I've wound clocks in that palace for most of my life, and people always ask me the same thing: what's it like being near power? Here's what I know. Everybody thinks power gets taken, grabbed, wrestled away in a room with a closed door. I've never once seen that. The only power I've ever watched move in 31 years was the kind somebody set down gently while they were still strong enough to choose.